Hi, everyone. This is building a recipe app using Django. My name is Daniel Nunez. My mentor was Steve Kane. A little bit about me. That's me and my dog, Porter. My website, technical and personal blog is mostly badfly.com. My cooking blog is comercaliente.com. And on social media, I'm mostly badfly. So the idea was Recetario, a recipe app, an app that a cook at home can use to input a recipe versus searching for recipes to cook. And I wanted something that was easy to use, so like if you're in the kitchen, have the laptop out or your phone out and just typing in the fields of what you need to add to your recipe. Some future ideas I had for it were recipes with annotations, so doing versioning of recipes with cook's notes. Kind of similar to something like GitHub where you commit a new recipe and you put notes with it. And then running trends on user data such as trending recipes and ingredients, things like that. So the plan, I started with the Django tutorial. I have some experience with Rails, but I'd never used Django before this, so I did the tutorial to get a good base application going. And then I met with my mentor pretty frequently, and then we reviewed everything on GitHub via pull requests to just collaborate that way, doing one piece at a time, making sure one form was complete before grouping the forms together, things like that. So I guess like the meat of my project was one form for one form for 3 different models. So a recipe would have one recipe, a bunch of ingredients for that recipe, a bunch of instructions for that recipe. So I wanted to create one form that you can submit all 3 at once and save them together, associating them to the recipe. And then once it's submitted, being able to edit that recipe. So the way I did that was I used model form and form sets to create my forms, and then utilizing create view and update view within views.py to render and submit the form and save everything together. Just a quick look at my models. The main thing I wanted to point out was basically that ingredient and instructions both have a foreign key relationship to recipe. So that's kind of the goal, is to have multiple ingredients and instructions for each recipe. And just some more, I created my forms using model form. So what I did was I took the models for each of the 3 items and exposed different fields to create form objects for them. And at the very end, I'm creating my form sets to be able to save ingredients and instructions as part of the recipe when I submit the final form. This is a lot of code, but basically what's going on here is the create view, where I'm getting context from my ingredients and instructions form sets, making sure it's valid, and then in one transaction committing it with the recipe in form valid. So just a quick look to see how this works. I staged a recipe entry. So this is what it looks like, the recipe entry form. I did it with Bootstrap. I used crispy forms at first, but then I realized that that was overcomplicated, so I think I might go back and take out all that HTML stuff that I had in forms and actually put it into my template. So this is the recipe setup. You can add ingredients and instructions to it, and then saving the form. We have grilled cheese sandwich. Going back is a list of recipes that users can go through. Here I input my recipe for mole, and it's a lot of ingredients, obviously, and then the instructions. And that'll be saved as a list of recipes that users can use or can use for inspiration. And then a few takeaways from this. I think smaller bites are easier to digest in the sense that once I got one part working of my app, kind of moving on with confidence and knowing that that works and that bit of code can be plugged in somewhere else and I don't really have to worry about it. I mean, I might have to because something else might break, but for the most part, like at least I know I can move on for the time being. Finding simpler solutions, that's kind of like the crispy forms thing. I realized I didn't really need to do all that after the fact. And in my forms code, I excluded it just because it was just way too bulky and wasn't the point of what I was creating in forms. Timing follow-up, confidence and know-how, basically just getting a perspective from my mentor in terms of how a developer works and how they process a new application. I'm a credit analyst right now, and I'm looking for work as a web developer. So it was really good to get that perspective and collaborate with Steve to see how how to build an application from start to at least almost finish, or to get to a certain point where I can actually use it. Some future things I want to do is add an image upload to the ingredients, to the recipe, so you can actually see the dish that you're creating. And then thank you. And also I just put the link to the repo for if anyone wants to check out the code a bit more. My contact information again. I just want to thank the program and Ray and Patrick for all the help they've provided, the fellow mentees for their, their inspiration. And that's it. If you have any questions.